Canada is launching its most aggressive military recruitment effort in nearly 30 years, and the reasons stretch far beyond simple manpower shortages. Because across NATO, the ground has shifted. The war between Russia and Ukraine has not just triggered concern, it has reshaped defense thinking across Europe and North America. In response, many NATO governments are pouring far more money into defense, expanding troop numbers, upgrading equipment, and in some cases, even reinstating mandatory training. Countries like the United Kingdom and Germany are also committing to larger militaries and higher defense spending as a share of GDP. And in the middle of all this, Canada is being forced to confront a long-standing question it has avoided for years. How prepared is it, really? For a long time, Canada was widely seen as lagging behind its allies on defense, and less than 2 years ago, the warning signs became impossible to ignore. A former defense minister publicly stated the armed forces were nearing a point of collapse due to severe recruitment shortages and growing pressure on an already stretched system. At the time, it sounded like alarmism. Today, it reads more like a warning that came too late, because now, the direction has changed completely. Canada's military is expanding at a pace not seen in decades. Recruitment levels have surged to numbers last recorded 30 years ago, and officials believe this momentum could finally close the long-standing personnel gaps that have weakened the force for years. So what changed? The answer sits in a world that is no longer stable, predictable, or distant. Over the past 2 years, global instability has intensified, wars have escalated, geopolitical rivalries have hardened, regional tensions have multiplied, and Ottawa has begun confronting a reality it could delay but not avoid. Its NATO commitments are under pressure. Billions of dollars in new defense funding are now flowing into the Canadian system, marking a structural shift in national priorities. But there is also another layer, one that is less strategic and more emotional: national sentiment. A shift that became more visible after former U.S. President Donald Trump referred to Canada as the 51st state. A remark that many Canadians did not interpret as humor, but as a challenge to sovereignty itself. Charlotte Duval-Lantoine of the Canadian Global Affairs Institute argues that what some call the Trump effect may be influencing recruitment trends, but she is careful about timing. The upward trend did not begin with political rhetoric. It began in early 2022, immediately after Russia launched its invasion of Ukraine. When people realize the world is no longer predictable and that their own country might be vulnerable, we inevitably see more individuals stepping forward to enlist. But external threats are only part of the picture. Inside Canada, another pressure point has been building quietly: youth unemployment, which reached almost 14% in March. For many young Canadians, stable careers are no longer optional. They are necessary. And the military, with guaranteed income, structured progression, and long-term security, has become a more attractive option than it has been in years. Prime Minister Mark Carney has repeatedly highlighted that stability, and the government has already approved substantial pay increases for military personnel, reinforcing the idea that service is being revalued. Since taking office last year, Carney has placed defense at the center of his agenda. He has outlined what he calls an ambitious plan to expand and modernize the Canadian Armed Forces. In March, Canada reached a symbolic milestone. For the first time since the late 1980s, it met NATO's 2% defense spending benchmark. That represents more than 63 billion Canadian dollars in a single year, roughly 46 billion US dollars or 34 billion British pounds. Carney has also aligned with NATO's long-term discussions around increasing defense spending further toward 2035. Prime Minister Mark Carney's plan is not simply about increased spending. It reflects a broader restructuring of Canada's defense system. A significant portion of funding is directed toward NORAD modernization, the joint North American defense framework shared with the United States. Canada is now placing renewed emphasis on Arctic security, a region increasingly viewed as strategically important due to environmental change and emerging maritime access routes. As conditions evolve, the Arctic is no longer treated as remote geography, but as a long-term operational zone requiring surveillance and infrastructure. Key programs: F-35 Transition 88 stealth aircraft replacing CF-18s, improving interoperability with U.S. Air Forces. Canadian Surface Combatant, CSC, 15 advanced warships, one of the most complex naval procurement projects in Canadian history. Arctic infrastructure radar systems, deep water facilities, and surveillance upgrades for northern monitoring. However, defense analysts warn that procurement alone does not equal capability. The real constraint is internal, the infrastructure of instruction. After decades of decline, Canada's training system is under strain. Despite applications approaching 100,000, many recruits face delays entering basic training due to limited instructors and facilities. This creates a structural imbalance. More people are joining faster than they can be trained, so recruits wait, sometimes for months, before they can even begin service. Canada has money and manpower, but not yet the machine to connect both. Richard Shamuka of the Macdonald-Laurier Institute argues that Canada's military still operates with limited deployment capacity. At present, Canada can field only a few thousand troops at once. By comparison, the United Kingdom can mobilize around 10,000. His assessment is direct. The current state of the Canadian Armed Forces is extremely low capacity. It will require 5 to 10 years before we begin seeing substantial improvements. He also highlights Canada's long-standing dependence on the United States for continental defense, a dependency that has drawn repeated criticism. In 2024, U.S. House Speaker Mike Johnson accused Canada of sheltering under America's umbrella. Donald Trump echoed similar criticism, calling NATO allies underpayers, and questioning why the United States should carry the burden alone. A NATO assessment confirms the gap. Even after reaching 2%, Canada still ranks near the bottom of the alliance in defense spending. But beneath the criticism, something is shifting. Recruitment numbers are rising, and internal systems are beginning to adjust. Defense Minister David McGuinty says recruitment targets may now be reached ahead of schedule. Attrition has also slightly eased, a significant shift after former Defense Minister Bill Blair described the system just a year earlier as being in a death spiral. In the Arctic, the change is becoming visible. During a sovereignty mission in Nunavut, personnel described cautious optimism, not celebration but acknowledgement that something long delayed is finally moving. First Officer Alden Campbell of the Royal Canadian Air Force said the military had been lagging for decades, but efforts to reverse that trend were now underway. He pointed to two changes: better salaries and expectations of modern equipment, both contributing to improving morale. By the end of April, Canada confirmed more than 7,000 new recruits in a single fiscal year, the highest intake in 3 decades. But this only reflects completed recruits, not total interest. Data shows verified applications, 40,116, up from 21,700. Total applications, nearly 100,000. 2019-20 comparison, 36,000 annually. Lieutenant Colonel Travis Haynes explains the key reason. The system itself was the barrier. Digitization, online applications, and faster processing have removed long-standing friction. Another major reform came in 2022 when permanent residents became eligible. Now nearly 1/5 of recruits are foreign nationals. Canada is preparing to expand toward 85,500 full-time personnel, up to 300,000 reserves. A scale not seriously pursued since 2004. Charlotte Duval-Lantoine notes that this shift reflects lessons from the Ukraine war, where sustained manpower has become a decisive factor. Canada and its allies are now studying the conflict not as an isolated war, but as a blueprint for future readiness. And so the question remains, is this the beginning of a true military transformation or a race to rebuild under pressure from a world that is already changing faster than institutions can keep up? Thanks for watching. Subscribe to USMag, leave a comment, and share if you found this valuable.